In the heart of Beirut, one of the Mossad's most effective spies lived entirely in plain sight. From the outside, Shula Cohen was a wealthy housewife. She hosted the Lebanese elite, cooked elaborate meals, and doted on her 7 children without a single hair out of place. But behind this domestic facade, she spent over a decade passing critical intelligence to Israeli authorities and running an international smuggling ring. She operated undetected for years because she possessed the perfect cover: weaponized sexism. The Lebanese establishment lived by strict traditional gender roles. To the police, the politicians, and the military, a pregnant mother of 7 was harmless. Her domestic invisibility served as her primary tradecraft. Every time counterintelligence officers looked her way, they saw exactly what they expected to see: a quiet housewife, thus allowing her to outmaneuver an entire nation's security apparatus. Looking at these dense, ancient streets of Jerusalem, you see the home Shula Cohen was forced to leave behind in 1936. At just 16 years old, her parents arranged her marriage to a wealthy businessman 20 years her senior. She was pulled out of high school and moved to Beirut, where her parents believed she would eventually adjust to her role as a wife and mother. This photograph captures the raising of the Israeli flag, made possible when the United Nations voted to partition Palestine into 2 states in 1947. That vote sent shockwaves through the Middle East, and violent tension quickly spilled into Beirut's ethnically divided neighborhoods. As you can see in this picture of an overwhelming crowd of armed soldiers, the Arab world was mobilizing. One afternoon, Shula sat quietly in the corner of her husband's shop while a group of Arab men browsed. They traded news about their village, acting as a makeshift military base, detailing the troop numbers and the weapon shipments heading south to fight the Jews in Palestine. They never noticed the pregnant woman listening to their every word. Shula went home, wrote down the name of the village, the troop counts, and the weapon details. Impulsively, she added her own name and address to the note and waited for a contact from the underground Jewish militia. After 11 years of severe domestic restriction and a lack of personal agency, she found an outlet for her sharp intellect. She chose to risk her life and her comfortable household to intervene in a looming war. Looking at the industrial scale of the Beirut docks in this image, you get a sense of the arena for her first active mission. The British had deported a prominent Jewish leader, placing him on a ship bound for Romania that was scheduled to stop right here. Her mysterious handlers gave her an order: get him off that boat and hide him. This diagram maps her operational structure, built on 3 foundational rules. First, she needed criminals, so she hired 2 brothers who controlled the Beirut docks to physically move the target. Second, money talks, so she tapped into her husband's wealth, securing 800 Lebanese pounds for the bribe. Finally, she needed her husband's complicity. He handed over the cash without a word. As the 1948 war broke out, her operation scaled rapidly. Jewish refugees fleeing Syria and Iraq flooded into Beirut's Jewish quarter. Shula adapted instantly, expanding her network to smuggle hundreds of displaced people across the heavily guarded border into the newly formed state of Israel. Moving hundreds of refugees meant bypassing police and customs altogether. To maintain this scale, Shula moved her operation into the high-stakes world of political corruption, using her social status to protect her network. The sheer volume of refugees eventually caught the attention of Lebanese counterintelligence. Officer George Anton, the head of a new undercover unit, noticed the smuggling patterns. His men intercepted a letter written in Hebrew addressed to Shula, and Anton dragged her into his office for intense, twice-weekly interrogations. Despite threats of a military trial, she denied everything. Ultimately, Anton's military superiors dismissed the case entirely. They looked at an uneducated mother of 7 and could not imagine she was capable of orchestrating an international smuggling ring. But Anton knew exactly who she was. Recognizing her brilliance, he made a shocking move. As a Christian minority in a Muslim-dominated region, he sympathized with the creation of the Jewish state. He flipped his allegiance, becoming a double agent and personally driving Shula to top-secret sites to show her where the Lebanese army planned to build its central ammunition arsenals. Her deepest societal vulnerability saved her life. Because the military prejudice of the era dictated that a simple woman could never outsmart them, they handed her the exact cover she needed to expand her intelligence network to the highest levels of the government. By the late 1950s, her network reached peak complexity. She rubbed shoulders with politicians and Gulf princes, pulling in state secrets and passing them to her handlers via a local pharmacy. She communicated using invisible ink painted to the labels of medicine bottles. But a network this massive could not stay hidden forever. In 1961, as the Lebanese political landscape fractured, George Anton realized the walls were closing in and fled the country. Police raided Shula's home in the middle of the night, dragging her into a waiting car while her husband and children watched. Over 3 months of brutal interrogation, her captors dislocated her jaw, knocked out 4 of her teeth, blinded her in one eye, and ripped out her fingernails. She never confessed to spying. The court sentenced her to hang, a punishment later commuted to 20 years of hard labor in a Lebanese prison. Her rebellion exacted a devastating toll. By daring to step outside the narrow life prescribed to her, her physical body was broken, her husband was thrown into prison, and her children were scattered to survive without their mother. She spent 6 grueling years in that cell. Then, in 1967, Israel achieved a military victory in the Six-Day War, capturing East Jerusalem, and with it, the Lebanese consul and his staff. The Israeli government issued an ultimatum. Lebanon would only get its diplomats back if they released Shula Cohen. She returned to Jerusalem physically destroyed by her captors, but completely unbroken in spirit. Tall, proud, and defiant, she walked back into the city she had been forced to leave 31 years earlier. She lived to be 100 years old, surrounded by dozens of grandchildren who affectionately called her Grandma James Bond. Shula Cohen proves that history is rarely shaped exclusively by politicians or trained soldiers. It is often written by those who weaponize the world's blind spots, using the very prejudices of their enemies to outsmart entire nations.